Bow down, sons and daughters of the Nile. For now a song shall rise. As old as the stars. As deep as the Nile's waters. As bitter and sweet as life itself. In the time when the world knew no shape. When heaven and earth had no boundaries. The gods bestowed upon humankind both love and sorrow. Osiris, the green king of spring, brought to the earth harvest and peace. His heart beat with the rhythm of the Nile. His word was bread. His smile, light upon the world. But where there is light, a shadow is also born. Seth, storm and ruin, could not endure the brilliance of his brother. He raised his hand to shatter life, and hurled the world into darkness. Yet the love of Isis, pure as flowing water, did not bow to death. She walked through deserts and rivers, gathering the fragments of what was lost. And with her tears, she melted the stone of despair. And from that love and anguish, Horus was born. A golden falcon, child of loss and hope. His eye became both light and shadow. His cry tore the heavens, and even the storm trembled. Thus begins the legend of love that defies death, of a battle that spans the ages, of balance forged in sacrifice. Listen, and remember. For this song is not only of the gods, but of you, of every heart that seeks the light within the darkness. Before the world had its final form, when the stars were like unquenchable embers in the vast darkness of chaos, the goddess of the sky, Nut, defied the curse of Ra and gave life to the earth. From her courage were born those whose names would shape the fate of eternity. The first among them was Osiris. His soul glimmered like dawn after a 1,000-year night. He carried within him the stillness of the ages, the scent of the earth after rain, the strength of grain breaking through stone. His eyes gleamed with the green of the Nile, as though the river's very fertility lived in them. From his first breath, both mortals and spirits knew, he was more than a god. He was a promise. Where his step touched the earth, it yielded in abundance. Where his voice was heard, hearts discovered hope. Osiris became the heartbeat of the world. At his side stood Isis, the echo of his soul, his destined queen, the eternal flame that would guard his light. But where light rises, a shadow is never far. His brother Set, even as a child, carried a storm within. He saw weakness in love, danger in generosity. His eyes burned with a red fire, and in the silence of the night he swore, never would he allow Osiris to stand above him. The years flowed like the mighty Nile. Osiris grew, and with him the kingdom of humankind flourished. He taught them to sow their fields, to build their homes, to honor the gods. His reign was an age of peace and plenty. People sang hymns in his name, and the rivers themselves whispered his praise. Isis was always near, steadfast and luminous, the quiet eternity that sheltered his flame. Yet in the shadows, the storm ripened. Set watched as people bowed to Osiris, and his heart hardened into stone. In every harvest he saw mockery, in every song, a challenge. And when he heard Isis call Osiris life and spring, the desert inside him ignited with fury. An ancient prophecy, older than the sands, whispered, "One child of Nut shall rise as the light to change the fate of the world. Another shall become the shadow, striving to destroy it." And so, as Osiris blessed the earth with a smile, Set laid his hand upon the stone and swore, "If he is life, I will be death. If he is spring, I will be the storm. And the world shall remember not his mercy, but my wrath." Thus began the path where love and despair, light and darkness, became bound in a single destiny. And the world did not yet know that this union would forge not only tears, but a legend strong enough to defy even death. Years flowed like the Nile, and under Osiris the kingdom blossomed like an eternal garden. In the fields, people sang his name, and the river, as if enchanted, rose only enough to nourish the crops without destroying their homes. By his side stood Isis, faithful and wise, like the night guarding the day. Together they were inseparable, two halves of one heart, two wings lifting the world. But in the shadows, envy ripened like poison. Set, the brother of Osiris, could no longer endure it. He was feared, but not loved. Revered, yet never cherished. And so his envy turned to hatred, and his hatred to a vow. If my brother brought life, then I shall bring death. And then the world will remember my name forever. One evening, Set called a grand feast, a festival cloaked in honor of Osiris. Messengers were sent to every land. Nobles, priests, and even gods themselves came, so that all would witness his cunning. Osiris, trusting as ever, accepted the invitation. But Isis, her heart uneasy, warned him. "My love, be careful." Osiris only smiled, his eyes shining like the Nile at dawn. "My heart knows no fear where there is truth. What can darkness do to the light?" The feast was magnificent. Torches blazed in Set's palace, music flowed like the river, and tables groaned under the weight of offerings. All praised Osiris, and even he, for a moment, believed in the sincerity of this celebration. Yet behind the laughter, the fire in Set's eyes smoldered, like coals hidden beneath ashes. Then Set gave the signal. A great chest was brought forth, carved from cedar and adorned with gold, gleaming as though it were a treasure of the gods. Set declared, "This chest will be a gift for the one whose body fits it perfectly." One by one, the guests tried, but none matched. At last, Osiris, smiling, stepped forward and lay inside. It was as though the chest had been made for him alone. In that instant, the lid slammed shut. Locks clamped, leads sealed the edges. Osiris had no time to cry out. Set's laughter thundered through the hall. "Behold your king. Behold your god of life, a prisoner in a wooden coffin." The chest was carried out. Fear bound the hearts of all present, none dared intervene. Only Isis rushed like an arrow toward the doors, but they slammed shut before her. She fell to the floor, and her scream split the night like a blade. The chest was cast into the dark waters of the Nile. The river, which had always sung to Osiris, now roared in anguish, bearing him away into the unknown. That night the heavens blackened, and even the stars hid their faces. The earth groaned with sorrow, for her king, her very heart, had been stolen. But Isis, weary of neither grief nor darkness, set out upon her journey. She walked the riverbanks, calling to the wind, whispering to the trees, praying to every star to guide her. And wherever she passed, people saw her tears and knew their hope was in peril. They offered prayers and sacrifices, begging that she would find Osiris. For without him, the earth began to wither, the crops to fail, and the heartbeat of the world to falter. Meanwhile, Set reveled in his triumph. He imagined his name becoming terror in every home. But he did not know the truth. The love of Isis was stronger than any lock, stronger even than death itself. That night, as the desert wind sighed, Isis lifted her voice in a vow. "I will find you, Osiris. Even if I must walk through darkness. Even if my heart burns in flames. I will not leave you in the arms of death." And her oath became a light in the night, a light even Set could not extinguish. The night stretched endlessly across the desert, and only the pale moon dared to light the path of the goddess. Isis walked along the banks of the Nile, yet Osiris lived in every step she took. His name beat within her heart like an eternal hymn, every breath whispered it, every tear carried it. The world already felt his absence, fields withered, the Nile withdrew into silence, and children wept with hunger. For where Osiris was not, the earth itself became a body without a soul. The wind murmured legends of her beloved, birds guided her path, and in the eyes of those she met glimmered hope. They gave her bread, water, and fire, not only for her sake, but for the hope that Osiris might yet return to them. For they knew, her journey was not merely for love, but for the heartbeat of the world itself. But the goddess's path was shrouded in peril. From the desert shadows came demons, messengers of Set, born of hatred for Osiris. They called to her with the voices of the dead, and others appeared in the likeness of Osiris, seeking to deceive her. Yet Isis placed her hand upon the sand, and it bloomed into green life, scattering the shadows. "My Osiris," she whispered, "I will know you, even through 1,000 false faces." One night she found a lonely hut by the river. Within, a sick child gasped for breath. Isis bent down, touched the child's brow, and sang a song older than the stars. The breath of life returned. The mother fell at her feet, calling her the goddess of mercy. But Isis only whispered, "Do not thank me. Thank Osiris. For his love revives all things, even through me." Her steps led her further, into the marshes where drowned spirits sang in voices that chilled the soul. They promised to reveal the chest of Osiris, but sought instead to drag her into the depths. Isis plucked a lock of her hair, breathed upon it, and it became a serpent of living light. The spirits shrieked and fled, unable to withstand the power of her devotion. And each night, visions came, the calm face of Osiris, his voice calling her across the waters. From these visions her strength grew, not lessened. At last she reached a distant land, where a great cedar stood upon the shore. The villagers said it had grown in a single night. Isis's heart knew the truth. "He is here. My Osiris." For the Nile had carried the chest and hidden it within the heart of the tree, a living guardian. She entered the king's court, veiling her divinity, serving humbly only to be near the cedar. By night she embraced its trunk and whispered words of love through the bark. And the tree wept resin, as if sharing her grief. But one evening, the queen discovered her holding a royal child above the fire, and fear swept the palace. Then Isis cast aside her mortal guise. Her true radiance filled the chambers with blinding light, and all fell prostrate before her. She declared, "I have not come for power or for gold. I have come for my beloved, for Osiris. He dwells within the heart of your tree." With trembling hands, the king commanded the cedar to be cut down. And when the trunk split, a golden chest fell forth, fragrant with the waters of the Nile and the resin of the tree. Isis dropped to her knees, embraced it, and whispered, "I have found you, my Osiris." She carried the chest into the silence of the night. Though the body within was lifeless, she felt his presence. Her tears fell, not of despair, but of hope. For she knew, death is but a door, and love has the power to open it. But in the distance, the sands began to stir. For Set had learned that Isis had found Osiris. And his wrath, black as flame, rose to meet the world. Isis hid the chest in a secret grove by the Nile, where the lotuses sang with the wind and no one dared disturb the sacred silence. She sat beside it, her hands pressed upon the lid, as if her warmth might pierce the cold of the wood. Each night she sang to Osiris, and even the moon paused in its course, lingering above the grove to listen to her song. But Set, like a storm that knows no mercy, felt the place where his brother was hidden. He came in a frenzy of wrath, and the very night trembled at his steps. When he beheld the chest, his lips curled in a smile, not of joy, but of cruelty. "You found him, sister," he hissed. "But you forgot, what is dead must not return." While Isis wandered in search, Set had gathered his warriors. They stormed the grove, desecrating its sanctity, and tore open the chest. And then the world seemed to stop. For when Osiris was ripped from her arms, it was not only the goddess who cried out, the stars quivered, the earth shuddered, and even the sky wept with her. Yet Set's hatred demanded more than death, it demanded oblivion. Seizing a sword of black metal, he cut Osiris's body into 14 pieces, casting them across the earth and into the waters of the Nile. "Now," he cried, his voice like thunder, "let your love seek not a body, but ashes." Wherever the pieces fell, the rivers stilled and the land withered, as though recoiling in horror. When Set departed, leaving ruin in his wake, Isis collapsed to her knees. The earth drank her tears and trembled, the Nile ceased its flowing, as if the heart of the world itself had stopped. But no defeat lived within her heart. Pain only fanned the fire of her love. She wrapped herself in spells and called upon her sister Nephthys. Though bound to Set as his wife, Nephthys' soul shared none of his hatred. She too knew sorrow and loneliness, and she answered Isis's cry. Together they began their long journey, gathering the scattered pieces of Osiris. By night they walked the fields, by day they crossed the deserts. Where they found an arm or a leg, they sang ancient hymns, and the earth, as though grateful, blossomed with flowers. One day they discovered his heart deep in the Nile. The waters glowed emerald, and not a fish dared touch it. Isis lifted it in her hands, and for a breathless moment, it seemed still to beat. Yet the darkest trial awaited. For Set had hidden one piece so that no soul might ever find it. He had cast Osiris's phallus into the depths of the river, where it was devoured by fish. When at last Isis gathered the body, she wept, for it was incomplete. Without this, she whispered, he cannot be restored. But Nephthys answered softly. Your love is stronger than any loss. You can bring him back, not as king of the living, but as king of eternity. So Isis fashioned a sacred substitute from gold and magic. She called upon Thoth, Lord of Wisdom, and he taught her secret words that opened the gates between life and death. Together, she and Nephthys laid out the body of Osiris, their hymns flowing like the breath of the wind, calling his soul to return. And a miracle came to pass. Osiris rose, not as one of the living, but as one who had crossed the threshold. His eyes shone like stars above the desert, and his body glimmered with the green light of life. In that moment, the world breathed again. For love had conquered even death. Isis rushed into his arms, and he embraced her. Their tears fell together, and flowers sprang beneath their feet. Though he could no longer remain among the living, their love was enough to spark a new miracle. That night, under the gaze of the gods, Isis conceived a son, Horus, the heir of Osiris, destined to avenge Set. When dawn touched the grove, Osiris said, I cannot stay, my beloved. But I shall be king of those who depart, and grant them peace. And our son will bring light to the living. Then he descended into Duat, the realm of the dead, leaving Isis with both hope and sorrow. Before the world could heal from the loss of Osiris, the Nile fell silent, and the earth mourned. Yet in the heart of Isis burned the last spark of his love. A child who carried within him both the grief of death and the promise of dawn. When the body of Osiris returned to the Duat, the world was on the verge of destruction. The Nile began to dry up, the fields dried up, and the winds brought only dust and weeping. But in the silence, full of shadow and hope, Isis carried within her an heir, the fruit of love. Born on the night when Osiris returned for a moment from the world of the dead. She knew that if Set found out about the child, he would destroy him as he had destroyed his father. So the goddess fled to the swamps of the Nile Delta, among the reeds and water lilies, where even the wind hid its breath. There she made a shelter. The days were filled with anxiety, the nights with prayers. Isis raised her hands to the sky, calling for protection from the stars, and sang to her unborn son. You are the light of Osiris. You are his voice and his revenge. You will raise your sword when the hour comes. When the time came for the birth, the world trembled. Thunderstorms covered the sky, for Set felt a new power emerging in the world. Isis screamed among the reeds, and her sister Nephthys stood by her, holding her hands, and driving away the demons that Set had sent. And at that moment, when lightning split the sky, a boy was born with a golden glow in his eyes. His cry sounded like the call of a new dawn. Isis lifted the baby above her head, and even the moon stopped its path to look at him. This is Horus, she whispered. The blood of my Osiris. The one who will restore balance. But the danger did not subside. That very night, Set sent snakes and scorpions to poison the baby. Isis embraced him, covering him with her body, and chanted the spell until her voice became thunder. And no poison dared to touch the child. In Isis's deep dreams, Osiris appeared. He stood among the reed fields of the Duat, holding a scepter in his hand. His voice sounded like a breath of wind. "Take care of our son, for he is the last hope of the world. His path will be long and full of pain. But through him I will live again in the light." Isis woke up with tears in her eyes, holding the child in her arms. She knew that years of trials lay ahead. From then on, every day was a struggle. She would hide the baby among the reeds when the sky was stormy, and pray to Thoth to protect his dreams. And Nephthys brought her secret gifts, honey, milk, herbs that drive away evil spirits. Thus, in the shadow of fear and to the songs of love, grew the one who was destined to raise his sword against Seth. Horus, son of Osiris, the last hope of the world. Seth, like a beast that had smelled blood, prowled the deserts and marshes, hunting for the child destined to be his undoing. His warriors trampled the lotuses, burned the reeds, and filled the hut of Isis with snakes and scorpions. But Isis stood unyielding. Every spell she spoke became a wall between Horus and death. She fed her son among the reeds, sang him lullabies older than the stars, and when danger approached, she hid him in a papyrus basket, so well concealed that even the wind dared not whisper its secret. Yet Isis knew, Seth would not rest until he struck with his own hand. And that day came. The western sky flared crimson, as though the heavens themselves bled, when Seth took the form of a monstrous black boar, the very embodiment of his fury, and thundered into the marshes. His roar shattered the silence. Birds burst upward in terror, and the reeds fell as if broken by a storm. Isis, feeling the terror in her heart, clutched Horus and raised her arms, summoning a towering wall of water to shield them. But Seth was merciless. With his horns he tore the barrier apart, and a black fang slashed across the child's face, piercing his eye. Horus's cry tore through the swamps, sharp as a blade slicing the night. Isis fell to her knees, clutching her son. His eye darkened, like a star extinguished in the heavens. Seth's laughter rolled like thunder as he vanished into the storm, leaving behind the stench of blood and sand. "Here is your hope. He will never be my rival." Isis's tears fell onto her son's face. "No, you will not fade, my falcon. You will not fade." Then Thoth appeared, bathed in the radiance of the full moon. He bent over the boy and whispered words that shimmered like silver. "Do not fear, goddess. His eye has lost its light, but not its power. This scar shall be the mark of his destiny. He was not born to ordinary fate. From this wound will rise the strength to see what no other can." Thoth touched the child's eyelid, and a beam of silver burst forth. The eye was transformed, no longer human, but divine. From that day, it was called the Eye of Horus, the eye that sees both light and shadow. And in the heart of the boy, for the first time, the flame of wrath was kindled. "I will find him, and he will fall." But Isis pulled him close and whispered through her tears. "Not anger, my son. Justice. Remember this, a sword without wisdom is only an instrument of ruin." And so each night, his silver eye glowed softly in the dark, a sign that his hour had not yet come. Meanwhile, deep in the desert, Seth gnawed the earth in rage. For he knew, his blow had not broken his enemy. It had forged him. Years passed. Horus grew in the silence of the swamps, under the vigilant eyes of Isis and Nephthys. His body strengthened like the trunk of a young cedar, and his gaze cut like a blade. But most of all, it was his eye that marked him. By day it blazed with gold, drinking in the sun. And by night it gleamed with silver, reflecting the moonlight. No god, no mortal could endure that gaze without trembling. For within it burned the wisdom of Thoth. and the fury left to him by Set. Isis taught her son not only the spells and sacred words of the gods, but the deeper wisdom of restraint. "My son," she said, "true power is not in the hand, but in the heart. He who strikes only with anger becomes like Set. You must be the light of Osiris." Yet at night, Horus left the hut and walked to the river. There he gripped a reed like a spear, striking the waves as though they were the boar that had scarred him. Each thrust was filled with the hatred that had festered since the day Seth's fang pierced his eye. And then, under the fullness of the moon, a vision came. Osiris rose from the Duat, his figure shining with the green glow of eternity. He stood on the riverbank and spoke. "Son, the time of silence is over. You are ready to rise. But remember, victory does not lie in destroying your enemy. It lies in restoring balance." Horus fell to his knees before the shadow of his father. "Since his fang wounded my eye, I have known no peace. I will not rest until I break him." Osiris placed a hand upon his son's head. "Your anger is fire. But fire without reason consumes even the one who carries it. Listen to your mother. Only then will your sword strike true." When the vision faded, Horus rose with resolve. He would no longer hide. He would show the world that the son of Osiris still lived. At dawn, he lifted a reed spear that now glowed with its own light. "Mother, I go. I am no longer a child of the swamps. I am a falcon born for the sky." Isis knelt, embracing him, tears burning in her eyes. "Oh, my son. I fear for you, but I cannot keep you in a cage. Go. But remember, justice, not anger, will lead you to victory." Then Horus raised his arms to the heavens. Light poured over him, and from his back spread great falcon wings. His cry tore through the sky, so fierce that even Set, far in the desert, shuddered at the sound. The warriors of Set looked upward and saw a falcon shining like a star. And fear struck their hearts. For they knew, the heir of Osiris had risen. Horus flew to the temples, long left in ruins by Set's fury, and lifted the people from their despair. "Your king did not die in the darkness. His blood flows within me. I am Horus, son of Osiris. I bring you hope." The people fell prostrate, weeping with joy. The fire of hope flared anew, as it once had under the steps of Osiris himself. But when Set heard these words, his fury was unchained. "So the chick dares to leave the nest? Then I will break its wings." And the desert thundered, preparing for the first great clash. The storm against the falcon. The desert trembled beneath the hot winds as Set marched forth with his warriors. His body burned with fury, his eyes blazed with crimson fire. Each step he took struck sparks, like stones shattered by lightning. He knew, this day he would face the one he had once tried to crush in the cradle. And above, soaring through the sky, came Horus. His wings shone with gold and silver light. And in his hands he carried a spear that drew in the breath of the winds. His gaze, the eye of Horus, glimmered with silver fire, piercing even the deepest shadows. He came not for himself alone, but bearing the memory of Osiris, the prayers of Isis, and the hope of the whole world. When they met upon the sands, the heavens darkened. The winds howled, and sandstorms rose, as though the very elements longed to witness the clash. "So, here you are, heir of my brother," Set roared, gripping a spear black as night. "Do you truly think you can stand against me? I am the storm. I am death. I am the one who shattered your father." Horus rose higher, and his voice thundered across the desert. "You are a murderer and a traitor. You brought only ruin to this world. But today, your reign ends." They rushed toward one another. The spear of Horus met the sword of Set, and from their clash erupted a blinding light. The earth split, the sand surged, the rivers held their breath. And then, within the roar of the storm, a voice filled Horus's heart, steady and strong. My son, remember, I am with you. Do not let anger become your god. Fight not with the strength of your hand, but with the strength of your heart. It was the voice of Osiris, carrying from the Duat, cutting through even the fury of the storm. Set transformed into a black boar, charging through the dunes, scattering all before him. But Horus spread his wings, and his silver eye blazed. The boar howled, for the beam pierced into his heart, revealing his own darkness. You fear, Set, cried Horus. Because you know, I am your doom. Set roared and changed shape again, this time into a colossal serpent. Coiling around, trying to crush the falcon. His coils suffocated the air itself. But Horus, recalling his mother's counsel and his father's voice, did not give in to wrath. He raised his spear and spoke the secret words taught by Thoth. The spear blazed, and its light cut through the serpent's dark coils, until the beast crumbled into sand. The people gathered at the edges of the desert fell to their knees, whispering, Horus! Horus, son of Osiris! Our deliverer! But Set did not yield. He raised a storm so fierce that even the stars hid themselves. In the midst of it, he struck Horus in the chest, hurling him to the ground. For the first time, blood stained the sands. From the Duat, the voice of Osiris came again, softer, but stronger than the storm. You have not fallen. Remember, my son, balance is stronger than the storm. Rise. Horus lifted his head. His eye blazed brighter than ever. And with renewed strength he hurled himself back into the fight. The battle raged on, through day and night, until the sky itself was clothed in the light of dawn. Set, exhausted, retreated into the desert, screaming his fury. And Horus stood upon the sands, bloodied, but unbroken. Then, for the third time, the voice of Osiris came, like the echo of the wind. You have taken the first step, my son. But your path is not yet ended. Prepare yourself, for balance always demands sacrifice. And the people, seeing Horus alive and undefeated, raised their hands to the heavens, crying his name. And in their hearts flamed the faith that darkness is never eternal. Many days and nights had passed since the first great clash. Horus was healing his wounds, while Set gathered new storms in the silence of the desert. The world itself held its breath, for all knew, the final reckoning was near. And so the great gods assembled in Heliopolis to decide the fate of creation. Ra, Lord of the Sun, blazed upon his throne. At his side were Thoth, keeper of wisdom, Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. Even Hathor and Mot descended, bearing harmony and truth in their hands. Isis led her son into the assembly. Horus walked tall, his silver eye gleaming like the moon on the clearest night. Behind him, the whisper of Osiris's presence moved like a hidden wind. And then Set entered, a storm in human form. His footsteps thundered across the marble floor, echoing like distant lightning. Ra raised his hand, and the wind stilled. Enough of the strife that has torn the earth. The time has come to decide who is worthy of the throne of Osiris. Set's laughter rolled like thunder. Me. For I am the stronger. What can this boy do, who nearly perished beneath my fawn? The world does not need mercy. It needs power. But Horus stepped forward, and his voice rang with a strength not his own. As though Osiris himself spoke through him. You brought death and ruin. I bring balance. The people call to me, for I am the son of Osiris, and his spirit lives within me. Ra's gaze was heavy as the sun. Words are but shadows. Prove your worth not only with the strength of your body, but with the purity of your heart and the wisdom of your soul. And so began a great duel, not for a day or a night, but for 80 years, as the priests would one day whisper. Horus and Set fought in countless forms. As men with flashing swords. As lions roaring in the dust. As serpents coiling in the dark. As bulls clashing with the strength of the earth itself. Each battle shook the heavens. Each clash carved scars into the earth. Stars fell, and stars were born again. One Set struck off Horus's head. But Isis, weeping, restored it with her magic. Another time Horus ensnared Set in a net. But the god of storms shattered the bonds with lightning. Their blood mingled with sand. Their cries echoed to the very gates of the Duat. At last, Ra decreed a final trial. Bring forth the boats. Let the waters themselves bear witness. Let truth reveal the rightful king. Set built his vessel from mountain stone. Believing no force could overcome its weight. Horus fashioned his from wood. Coated in gleaming wax until it shone like the morning sun. Upon the waters they met. Set, in the form of a raging hippopotamus, charged to overturn Horus. But Horus's boat glided lightly. Like a lotus untouched by the current. Set's heavy stone vessel sank, dragged down by its own arrogance. For power without harmony destroys itself. Then Mot stepped forward, her voice sharp and clear as a feather cutting the silence. Balance is not the absence of the storm, but its taming. The throne belongs to Horus. For he is not only the son of Osiris, he is the beating heart of this world. Set roared like 1,000 tempests. But the voices of the gods thundered louder. They decreed. Horus shall be king of the living. And Set shall rule the desert and the storms. So shall it be while the world endures. Isis wept with joy. And Horus bowed his head in gratitude. Yet in his heart he knew. Set would not vanish. For where there is light, shadow always follows. And from beyond the veil of the Duat, the voice of Osiris whispered like the wind across the Nile. My son, you have proven the truth. The world is not held by the sword, but by the heart. Remember, balance is your greatest weapon. And so began the final chapter of the legend. Where light and shadow found their boundaries. And the destiny of gods and men was bound by sacrifice and eternal memory. Horus sat upon the throne of his father, and the earth sighed with relief. The Nile rose once more, spilling its lifeblood across the fields, and green returned where dust had ruled. The people lifted their voices in songs of gratitude, for faith burned in their hearts, light had conquered darkness. Beside him stood Isis, proud, yet weary. She watched her son as he gazed upon the people, and in that gaze she saw the echo of Osiris. There was mercy, as there had always been in his father's eyes. But also the shadow of pain. For victory had not come freely. The scars upon Horus's body and the sorrow within the eye given by Thoth told a story only he could bear. He had seen more than any soul was meant to see. Yet Set had not vanished. He was given dominion over the deserts and the storms. And though defeated, his strength remained. For even the gods knew, without chaos, the world would lose its balance. And so, in every storm that raged across the sands, the people heard his laughter. A reminder that evil is never destroyed, only chained. At night, Horus walked to the banks of the Nile and lifted his gaze to the stars. Sometimes, in the quiet shimmer of the reeds, he saw the figure of Osiris in the fields of reeds. And the wind would carry a voice across the waters. My son, you have fulfilled your destiny. The world endures because you endured. Horus bowed his head. Yet in his heart there always lingered the weight of loss. He could feel his father near. But he could never hold him. And he knew, it would always be so. Isis, too, came often to the river. She would sit upon the stone and whisper to the flowing waters. I brought him back because of you, Nile. And now I have let him go once more. But his blood flows in our son, and in this is my salvation. The people, seeing their world renewed, made a sacred ritual. They brought offerings to Osiris, believing he would accept them in the Duat and grant peace to the departed. They named him King of Eternity, and Horus, King of the Living. Thus, in their prayers and rites, harmony lived again. A harmony forged through sorrow and sacrifice. Years passed, and Horus became the very symbol of justice. His eye, the eye of Horus, was carved into amulets, worn upon the hearts of the living as a shield against evil. But whenever Horus gazed into the waters of the Nile, he saw not only his own reflection, but the face of Osiris. A solemn reminder that his throne had been won at the price of love and death. And so, lifting his hands to the heavens, Horus whispered, "Father, I have not forgotten. I hold the world, because you once held it for me." Isis, watching him, smiled through her tears. For she knew, her love had defied death itself. Yet she also knew that every victory demands its price. And theirs was eternal longing for one who could never return. Thus the great struggle came to its end. Light and shadow divided their dominions. Love and grief became one story. And the name of Osiris remained, not as a shadow of death, but as an eternal spring that never fades. And in the silence of the nights, when the Nile sings its ancient song, a whisper drifts upon the air. Love does not die. It only changes its home. Hearken, sons and daughters of the earth. For this is not a song of death, but of eternity. O Osiris, green king of the reed fields, you have fallen by the hand of your brother. But your glory has not fallen. For Isis, your true love, passed through darkness and despair, and gathered you from the scattered shadows. With her tears she revived the fields. With her song she raised the wind. And her heart became the key to the doors of the Duat. O Horus, golden falcon, you are the cry of heaven and the breath of the earth. Your eye sees both light and shadow. You have risen against the storm. And though your body bears scars, your spirit shines like the sun after night. And you, gods and men, remember. Not anger, but balance is the true victory. For love is stronger than death. And even in darkness the lotus blooms. May the name of Osiris be eternity. The name of Isis hope. The name of Horus justice. And may Set, the undying storm, remind that light needs shadow to shine even brighter. Thus sings the Nile. So whispers the stars. So keeps memory eternal.